Hi, and welcome to this week's client webinar. Great to have you along once again. We are joined yet again by Devon, making a habit of this.
Well, you can see you didn't take the holiday, did you?
By Devon CIO Mark Brown. Great to have you along, Brownie. You well?
Oh, I'm good. Very
Not
good.
taking a holiday?
I'm waiting until the weather warms up somewhere.
Well, things have quieted down a little bit, I suppose, particularly in New Zealand. We've got quite a bit going on offshore, but I suppose, most recently we've had that news around Suncorp.
Yep.
And ANZ. And Suncorp's held in the Devon Dividend Yield Fund.
Yes.
We'll just recap them.
Yep.
What's happening?
A fairly well publicised deal, I guess, but it's Suncorp selling its bank. It's got a big Queensland-based bank to the ANZ, so it's a good deal for ANZ in so much as it helps it penetrate that Queensland market where it's largely unpenetrated. But the deal is sizable. It's a $4.9 billion deal, and ANZ has raised $3.5 billion in a rights issue, 1 for 15, with a price around $18.90, which is quite an attractive entry point, I think, if you can get it there, 18.90 Aussie. So yep, the deal's done. Well, the capital raising is certainly done, and we've got all the regulatory hoops to go through now to make sure that the transaction goes through. But if it does go through, that's quite a lot of cash to Suncorp and Suncorp shareholders. And the board of Suncorp has stated that they will return the bulk of those funds to shareholders, which is great news for the dividend yield fund, by way of a fully franked dividend, some buybacks, and a capital return. So hopefully it's large and tax efficient.
Yeah, and was it a surprise? I mean, Suncorp been looking at their, I suppose it's almost been non-core, has it, in terms of their banking business?
Well, Suncorp has always been caught betwixt and between, really. It's neither a bank nor a general insurer, and when general insurers are running, banks aren't, and sort of lags one, and there's always one's underperforming when the other's performing. So it hasn't really benefited. There's been talk for a long time now of separating out the bank from the general insurer and releasing value in that way. I think we just had to get through, royal commissions on banks and all the other issues that have plagued the banking sector for some years now. And once we're through that into some clean air, the deal, I guess, could be done. And ANZ was probably the most obvious party, really, given it is one of the smaller banks and not having that exposure in Queensland. So it helps it really get a good footprint in that state. I think I know it retains the Suncorp brand for a number of years, and then presumably it rolls that into ANZ.
Great. Well, sun's shining on Suncorp, and that looks like another good outcome for the, as you say, held in the Devon Dividend Yield Fund, which you manage. Yeah. Just moving on, it has been a bit quiet other than that, but in New Zealand we've got a couple of AGMs. Yes. We've got Mainfreight and Ryman. What are you expecting there?
So this is sort of the quiet before the storm now, which is, I guess, why people are on leave in the market. We're awaiting the reporting season for companies that, as we've spoken to before, companies that have a half year or year end on the 31st or the 30th of June. And so the market is keen to get companies' views on how they see the future. I think pretty much the earnings will be strong for the 6 months up until this period, but we're trying to get a glimpse of the future here. And I think with Ryman and Mainfreight, we're going to get the first little glimpse of that future. I think both of those results will be strong. For Ryman, it really is about house price inflation, which has not been great. We've seen it marginally fall across New Zealand, and so it's highly correlated to that, Ryman is. And of course, the other thing for Ryman will be the $2.5 billion worth of debt that it has on its balance sheet, and the impacts of interest rates and how they've hedged that, because up until very recently, a lot of that has been unhedged. So that's key for them. For Mainfreight, it will really be about operating conditions globally. The stock has had a phenomenal performance year to date, and I think this result will, or at least this AGM, if they give us any glimpse of the current quarter that they're in, I'm sure it'll be positive. We've seen Kuehne + Nagel, one of their global peer groups, Comcos, have their half-year result this week, and the numbers were eye-wateringly strong. Albeit we're starting to see global freight rates come off their highs. Now, if you think about Mainfreight's air and ocean business, they've had a 5-fold increase in revenue, in profit actually, 5-fold increase in profit from what is only a 20% increase in volume. So there's been massive pricing that's gone on in that sector. So huge beneficiaries of the disruption we've all seen in global freight. And we fully expect that number to come back. And so this will be our first glimpse of is that starting to come back? How fast will those numbers come back? But clearly, I think we will see downgrades to consensus. Consensus is still very high for the companies. Look, brilliant business. Just one of the COVID beneficiaries that sort of people haven't come yet to realize that actually freight rates have had a massive impact on earnings, and that could normalize quite quickly.
And so supply chains are freeing up. Is that sort of what's driving that, or?
Yes, I mean, there's a number of things that are affecting it. Firstly, we had global freight rates go through the roof as a result of COVID and the restrictions we've seen and port congestion and so forth. Look, for the main, port congestion will probably be a thing of the future until we get more capacity. But COVID, the relaxation of COVID restrictions, and the fact that consumers will probably be buying less in a lower global growth scenario, and so you just have to assume that freight rates will normalize, and when they normalize, so will the returns that people like Kuehne + Nagel, Mainfreight, and others have made.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how those pandemic beneficiaries go. But thank you for that, Brownie. And so a couple of AGMs to look forward to there, Mainfreight and Ryman, and obviously along with that news on Suncorp, which is particularly relevant to investors in the Devon dividend yield fund. But thanks for your time once again, Brownie, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for tuning in again. Do get your questions in ahead of time, and we'll cover those or anything you want covered in this webinar. But enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch you again soon. Bye for now.